Okay, I think I got everything. No glitches. That's amazing. We're live in Facebook and we are recording. So I can, show this to everyone later, the people who couldn't join live. So welcome everyone. If you are already here, you are welcome to be on screen or you can stay off, whichever you prefer. You can put questions in the chat if you have them, and I will check periodically the Facebook group questions as well. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Hi, Angie. Um, so some of you were invited through our guest, Aisha. So I'll go ahead and just really briefly introduce myself in case you've never met me before. My name's Kerry Thomas. I own Conquer the Chaos, and I'm an organizing and productivity coach. And the reason this talk today is so important to me is that even though I am certified in systems, for very high level systems for businesses, corporations, professionals, and love that part of my job. My passion is what we're talking about today, and that is how the mental and emotional side of clutter, even the spiritual side, is so important and impactful. And that's why we're here today. So today, my guest is Aisha Taylor. I love her to pieces. We've been online friends for a couple of years, and we are in a faith-based class together. So I feel like I've gotten to know her really well. And she does absolutely amazing things in the world. She has a lot going on. And I even wrote it down because I'm like, wow, she does so much. But she works with people, helping them create an exit strategy from corporate so they can start their own business. She works with anyone who has an idea for a business so that that can come to fruition. She also runs a really incredible single moms Bible study on Clubhouse. And I think that's probably one of the most popular things that you do. And we speak the same language. And as you'll see, because she has a devotional called Chaos to Calm, and does a 25-day devotional. So she and I are definitely on the same page about a lot of things and speak the same language. So I'll hand it over to you, that you do a little bit better introduction, and then we'll dive in.
So thank you, Terry, for having me. That was a great introduction. So one of the things that I do is I'm really passionate about helping single moms to really grow their faith, own their finances, and walk in purpose, which is how the Lord really pivoted me into doing the exit strategy thing. And so it's so funny because I guess I was working with single moms to create the exit strategies from corporate. Like the Lord was telling me, like, there are two things that really block people from exiting corporate or walking in purpose or turning their ideas into income. The first one is faith, and the second one is finances. And so as the Lord began to take me upon my own journey, he started to reveal to me, like, okay, when were the times that I was fighting God for his purpose for my life? It was when I didn't believe him that I had a purpose and a plan for my life. It was because of trauma. And so moving through trauma, healing from the emotional clutter that trauma causes, getting rid of the physical clutter that trauma causes became very key and impactful for me to be able to have the faith to believe God and walking in purpose. And so as he began to reveal more of the journey that I've been on with him, he's been able to show me exactly how I should be able to serve my clients in terms of helping them to walk in purpose, helping them to believe that God has a purpose and plan for their lives. Because when we've gone through heartache, when we've gone through pain, when we've gone through loss, when we've gone through trauma, when we've gone through setbacks and challenges, sometimes it's very difficult to believe that. And sometimes we respond in ways that aren't healthy, that aren't helpful for us, that move us back instead of moving us forward, which is why finances is so important, which is why Bible study is so important, which is why faith is so important, and which is why decluttering your life emotionally and physically is so important. And it's so funny, Kerry, as you were talking about chaos to calm, when I first came up with the title, actually a friend of mine one of our mutual friends actually gave me a suggestion for that title. I didn't realize how prophetic it was at the time about the journey that the Lord has literally had me on. It is about moving from chaos, mind like all over the place, right? Mind so full of the stuff from the past, space in my environment so full of the space of the stuff in the past that it was literally impossible for me to move forward into purpose, move forward into clarity, move forward into calm until I began to address those things that were causing so much clutter in my life.
Wow. Wow. So what does that look like and from a practical standpoint? Because I'm sure as you're talking, people here live or people that watch the replay are like, oh my gosh, yes, some of these things are holding me back. And I know they're holding me back. But what does that look like on a practical level for you? Like what have you decluttered and what like tell me what that's been like.
I totally just realized that I forgot to even say my name. So I'm glad you said my name because I started jumping in. Hi, everyone. My name is Aisha Taylor, and I am the founder of FNPHENOMENAL. Okay, now that we got that out the way, I have a tendency
You
to
were a
jump right
little
in.
excited to share your message, just a little.
I know, I get so excited. Like, I totally forget to like tell people who I am. But from a practical perspective, for me, it's so funny story. So I moved from Detroit like 6 years ago. And so take even a step back. I have a tendency to move and never unpack my boxes. So I remember when I moved to Michigan a long time ago, my stuff stayed in boxes from when I lived in North Carolina. It's like, and then I found myself when I moved from Ann Arbor to Detroit, I literally picked up the boxes that were still packed from North Carolina that I brought with me to Ann Arbor, that I then moved to Detroit, put them in the spare bedroom. And then when I was moving to another place in Detroit, I was about to like take those same boxes that came with me from place to place to place, but I forced myself to actually go through them. And so I have a tendency to collect stuff, and I have a tendency to bring the stuff from location to location to location without ever going through it. And I remember actually some of the stuff when I moved into my old apartment, into my old condo, I actually threw it in the closet because at that point it was taking up a whole spare bedroom. It just took up a closet. So it was better. But for me, what that practically looked like was opening up the boxes and beginning to go through this stuff. And this is a journey that I'm actually on now because 6 years ago, I moved from Detroit and I moved the boxes and the boxes just sat in a space in the house. And I would walk past them every single day and I would look at them. And then I got so used to looking at them that they became invisible, that they were just like a
Clutter
part
blindness.
of the house. Yeah, it's just clutter blindness. And it became a part of the house, almost like a part of the furniture, almost a part of like it was actually supposed to belong there because it had been there so long. And I think the same is true with our emotional clutter as well. We get so used to living with it that we just begin to tolerate it, that it begins to be a part of us, that we just own it almost. It becomes a part of who we are. I remember when I was dealing with anxiety, I would be like, oh, my anxiety, as if the anxiety was natural in me and that it belonged in me. But I got so used to being in that state of anxiety that it became a part of me. And it wasn't. But it was until I went to therapy, until I began to address the root causes of the anxiety. As I began to say that this anxiety does not have to be a part of me, I no longer want it. I no longer tolerate it. I began to write down the lies that I had believed for so long that became a part of who I was, and literally wrote the lies down on one sheet of paper and wrote the truth on the other half of the piece of paper. And began to expose the lies for the lies that they were, and then create a new narrative on the new side of the paper and make a decision that I was no longer going to live on the left side of the paper where the lies were, but I was going to begin to live on the right side of the paper where the truth was. And
That's
so
powerful.
if you think about gardening, 'cause I'm a gardener. So if you think about gardening, and the Lord gave me a really good revelation through gardening one time. So we had crabgrass in the back of the yard. And so one of the things that we did is covered up the crabgrass, let the crabgrass die. But I noticed that if we didn't plant new grass seed in the bare area of the soil, then more crabgrass. And if it wasn't crabgrass, it became like dandelions or other weeds would grow in that bare spot. And so this is the thing that we actually have to do in our lives. It's not enough to uproot the lie. We actually have to begin to plant the seeds and water the seeds of truth that we want to see in our lives. Otherwise, more lies, more weeds will sprout in our lives. And that was what was true with the physical, with the emotional clutter and that type of journey that I went on. But in terms of physical clutter, literally I got to the point where God just started to illuminate that clutter so much that I can no longer ignore it. Like those boxes were foreign to me. I was just looking at them like those boxes can no longer be here anymore. They have to leave. They have to get out of here. And so what I did was take it. It wasn't even just room by room. And I'm still going through the process. I still have stuff to finish, but I picked one room. And then I got to the point where I ended up kind of gotten to the point where I could not declutter anything else in that room. And initially it was because I wasn't ready to move on to the rest of the stuff. But when I began to feel a lot of resistance in one area, I said, okay, I'm going to pause right here. I'm not ready emotionally to continue to conquer the clutter in this space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to another room where I'm ready. And so that
That's
second room.
huge. That I want people to really notice what you said there, because sometimes when we open a box and we're not ready to deal with what's in that box, then the whole thing's abandoned and we just give
Mhm.
up. But you weren't willing to give up. You said, okay, not yet to
Mhm.
this, but I'm going to go over here and find something easier. And I think that's why you've made so much progress.
Right. And I began to focus on the quick wins. So
Yes.
initially, I would focus on the quick wins. And one of the things that I would caution people, I remember when I first started, I would spend 3 hours at a time doing it, to the point where like my feet were hurting, my back was sore just from standing up. And then I would do those 3 hour marathons and then went and touched it again for like 2 weeks to a month. And then I would do another one. Actually, no, I did like a week of 3 hour marathons. And I think for 6 months, I didn't touch it anymore. And so one of the things I would say is pace yourself. You can get really excited along the clutter journey, but you have to pace yourself and develop a pace where you can sustain it. Because having short bursts of massive action that you can't sustain, what happened to me is I started to feel guilty about not touching it. And then because I felt guilty, I shrunk back and hid and just decided to make the clutter invisible again. And I would just continue to go back and watch it. But then I started to feel more shame. And the more shame that I felt, the less I wanted to go back and tackle it. And it got to the point where the room that the clutter was in, I just wouldn't go in there unless I had to, because
I
I didn't
think
want to look
there
at it.
I think there are so many people that right now are like nodding their heads, going, "Yes, yes, I know this. I've experienced this
Mhm.
so much. It's so true." So, what what was one of your biggest aha moments, or one of the biggest times where you felt that getting rid of something really propelled you on your path toward your purpose?
I'm laughing because this is super embarrassing, but I'm going to say it because I don't
Okay,
know who's going to be set free from this ridiculously embarrassing story. But I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to own
I'm
it.
so glad I asked this.
It's so embarrassing. So I had gotten to a point where in one room, I kind of bumped up against everything that I could declutter that I was ready. And there was one more book and one more box that I was not ready to tackle. I looked at it, I was like, I can't do this. Put it back and where it was and moved on to another space. But by that point, I had mostly decluttered everything in that room except that box. And so, and I think one drawer, but everything else was like done. And so it just wasn't ready. So I moved back to the area where I started, where I kind of bumped up against some resistance. And by that point, I'm like on a 2 year journey of starting and stopping with decluttering. So I don't want you guys to think it was overnight. It was a 2 year journey. And so I was finally ready to tackle the boxes from 6 years, from when I moved 6 years ago, because a lot of the other stuff, I was just decluttering old stuff from like, you know, preschool on up, right? And so finally I was ready to tackle the boxes because the boxes were the things that I felt that I needed. I just needed to find the place to unpack it. So it's finally ready to tackle the boxes. And I started off with some of the bags of stuff that I had brought in. And I go through this bag and I pick up this bag. I'm like, oh, this should be a quick one. This should be easy. I literally open up the bag and pull out the Ziploc baggie. And so my kids are 6. So I saw in there like stuff from when they were being formula, like baby formula. And, but it was like black liquid in there. So it's almost like I used the cups, stirred up the formula and put it in the Ziploc so nothing spilled and put it back in this bag and did not realize it. So when I put the bag with the stuff that I had packed that I moved over from Detroit, I didn't realize that I had that in there because there was other stuff in there from when I moved. And I was just like, this is disgusting. And so I immediately threw it away and then picked up this other Ziploc bag. And I was just like, was this from when we had snacks on the road? I'm like, these are old donuts. I'm like, what has this been doing here for 6 years? This is disgusting. And so not only did I find a Ziploc bag full of formula residue that had turned black, I found an old bag of 6-year-old donuts. It was half of a Ziploc bag full of donuts from 6 years ago. I was just like, that's disgusting, and threw it away. And then I started going through this bag, and I'm like, why did I think that any of this stuff was worth moving across state lines? Like, why did I keep,
Yeah.
like when you go,
Time, money, effort.
right. It was just like, how you go to conferences and you get like the free stuff for the conferences or like the conference bag. It was like random stuff like that. And like, why would I want this? Why didn't I throw it away before I left? So I just started throwing away all of this stuff in the bag, literally kept like maybe 3 things. Finally get to the bottom of the bag and found a pack of 4 Starbucks gift cards, $10 each. So $40 worth of Starbucks gift cards. At the bottom of all this whole bag of trash, I found $40 worth of Starbucks gift cards. And I thought about it, and that was an aha moment to me because I realized that that old pack of donuts, that old bag of disgusting formula stuff was the trash that I had been holding on to in my life, not just in my physical environment, but my mental clutter, the trash that was taking up space, that was unable to make room for the stuff, bless you, that served me in the season, or that served me, period. Like it represented the trash that I never should have held on to, the stuff that should have been immediately thrown away, tossed and discarded, but yet I allowed it to weigh myself down for all those years. So I began to really understand the emotional and physical connection to it. And then to take it a step further, I realized that at the bottom of the bag of all this trash was treasure, because it was $40 worth of Starbucks gift cards. And so it was just like the Lord's provision for what he has me to do and who he has me to be have been there the whole time. The Starbucks gift cards did not just appear overnight. It just did not fall from the sky into that bag. They had been there the whole time. I just needed to be willing to go through the process and to go through the clutter in order to discover what was already there inside the entire time. And that to me was like profound, because I felt like there was not only a shift in my desire to finish the decluttering process, there was a shift in me, because I realized that I needed to unearth, uproot, and throw away the trash that was in my mind and in my life so I can uncover the treasure that was in me this whole time. But God was just telling me, you have to be willing to get rid of the trash to find the treasure so I can walk in the purpose and plan and blessings that God had for me. Because some of us are praying for provision. Some of us are praying for blessings. Some of us are praying for favor, but God has already unleashed it and provided it for us. We just have to be willing to go through the trash and the stuff that does not serve us anymore, to get rid of the stuff instead of finding a new place for it inside of us. Get rid of it and be done with it. Not only just get rid of it, when I put it in a bag, I immediately took it outside. When I was done for that day, I did not leave it sitting there in the trash bag for me to take out on another day. I got rid of it that same day because I was so determined not to hold on to any of that stuff anymore.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That was huge. You said so many things in there that are so very important and so true. And that's part of the reason why I do it almost in a joking way. But if you're friends with me on Facebook, you'll see that I always share when my clients find money, because it happens every single time, as you just illustrated. And whether it's small or big or anything, that's part of why I share that, because it is that uncovering process. I've never worded it as eloquently as you just did. So thank you. But it's true. And we have to peel back those layers. And you're right, our purpose has been there all along. Even if our purpose is simply, in that moment to live more clutter free so that we can, be brighter and happier and better with our family and our friends. And yes, that's so, so, so powerful. Thank you. Um, so on the, I had so many questions and you just like blew past all my questions. But on the flip side, on the flip side, you touched on it a little bit about opening the box and you weren't ready. And I'll tell one of my quick stories really fast before I ask my question. That I had a box that I packed in 2018, and it was a blue tote, and I put a big sticker on it, and it said wedding, and it was all like memorabilia and my album and pictures and everything from my wedding. And I moved it unopened, 3 different states, like 5 different places, into storage, out of storage. I never opened it because I just couldn't. I just couldn't open it. And so this December, I finally brought the last of my things from Virginia to North Carolina, and I didn't have room. And so sometimes it's the practical that forces us into action because I didn't have room to bring this big tote that said wedding. And so I said, okay, I'm going to open it. And what was funny was the actual like lifting the lid was the hardest part. Once I opened it, I realized this isn't hard at all. And I was able to pick out things that brought me joy, things that I did want to keep, things that made me happy. And I was able to let the rest go. But I, like you, dragged it from place to place to place. And so my question with that I'm curious, when you said you opened some of those boxes and you said, no, not yet. Um, what do you think those hurdles were about, and how did you eventually overcome them?
So I think some of the hurdles, oh, that's a good question. I think that some of the hurdles were actually about who I thought I was going to be and who I define myself as. Because one of the things that I realized in the process of everything is that I have been looking at my life almost through the lens of like being a has-been, if that makes any type of sense whatsoever. So I was looking at things as if my best days were behind me, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
and that I had to live in the glory days of what things had been, instead of looking at things from a place of my best days are behind me. I had gotten into a place where I was existing instead of living. And for me, I was looking at all the keepsakes, right? Keepsakes from the glory days. And this is going to sound so crazy. I remember I used to date this one guy, and he was used to be a college football player. And I remember being at his house one day, and he was just showing me all his college memorabilia. And then he brought out tape to look at film, like literally old film of his. And I was just like, this is weird, right? This is weird. I don't understand why I'm on this tour of college memorabilia, first of all. But now we're looking at old film, like literally, like, did you see me move? Did you see me move? Did you see that move right there? And I was like, this just got really weird. And so I was just like, I can't do this. I can't date you if your life is going to be about me looking at old film of you playing college football. And I realized, and I ran. Um, real talk, I ran. But then I realized as I was decluttering that that was what I was doing. In my, like with me, I wasn't sitting there having other people go through my stuff as I described it, but that was what I was doing in my own life. I was living my days as if my best days were behind me, as if all my trophies were going to be the only trophies that I ever received in life. All the plaques and the accolades and the press clippings were all that was ever going to be in my life. And when I got to the point where I realized that my life was not defined by the past, but I actually had a future that was good, it allowed me to let the stuff go to make room for new memories and new experiences and new
Yeah.
life in my past. I mean, in my future. And that I did not have to live in the past anymore, because the past was almost like a preview. It was almost like God was giving me a preview of how awesome He made me, right? So I can build on that and not be defined by that.
Okay, you're the first person I've ever interviewed that's going to make me cry. Seriously, that was that. Yeah, people need to like replay that and listen to that again. That's so true. And, clutter very often, my favorite definition from Barbara Hephill is clutter is postponed decisions, which we've talked a lot about here, postponing the decision. But clutter is also, it also occurs because we hold on to that old version of ourselves, where if we just let it go, like you said, the newness can come in, the new experiences, the new memories, the new adventures, and we open up that space physically and metaphorically to allow those new things to come in. So that's so powerful. Yes, so good. I had a similar experience last May because, as you know, I got rid of everything pretty much. I mean, 95% of everything I owned, and I sold it, donated, got rid of it. And there was a moment, and I'm not too proud to admit, I think every single day of May 2021, I cried at some point. This process isn't easy when you have to do it fast. Sometimes, you don't have time to put the box away and wait. But there was a day where I had taken all of these things out of this extra closet that I had that were like kitchen overflow. So it was like a coffee carafe and big pie plates and cake stands and just like fancy cookie decorating thing. It was just like all this entertaining things. And you look at it and you think how much money was spent on this. A great deal of money at one time was spent on these things. And so I'd spread it out on the rug in my kitchen, and I just stood there and I had this very, very strange sensation of I don't even know the person who used all those things. Like I'm not even sure who that was, who she was, and and so again, I just picked out a couple of the things that I still wanted to carry forward in life, and I was able to let it go when I realized that. And I love the way you said the glory days, like those. I have very fond memories of being that person, but I was not that person in that moment, standing there last May. So I was able to
Right.
let it go. Yeah. Wow. Good, 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 good stuff. Um, Okay, so we've skirted around it, and I think both of us, in telling our stories, have brought it up, but not really. And I'm going to ask you a hard question and see how you answer this because you have been on fire today. Um, how do you feel that forgiveness plays a role in the decluttering process?
Woo!
Gotcha.
I think that I think it's like the key that unlocks everything. I really do, because it's so funny because simultaneously the Lord had me on a forgiveness journey in life. Because I realized like one of my favorite quotes is like unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But that's what I realized I was doing. It was like I held on to unforgiveness towards me, and my decisions and who I let hurt me, or things that I didn't do that I wish that I did, or um, you know, and I think sometimes we can hold on to unforgiveness towards ourselves because we want to be further along than we are. And I think that there was so much of that going on. The woulda, coulda, shoulda. So I had to forgive myself. And it's so funny. One of the back boxes said, two of the boxes that I went through very quickly were labeled keepsakes. And most of that stuff ended up in the trash. I'm like, how was this box labeled keepsakes? Why would I want to keep any of this? But I had to get to the point where I could forgive me to be able to let it all go. And then as I went through it, I was triggered by some certain pictures, of friends that were no longer friends. And in that, I was like, ooh, ooh. And so in that, I had to be like, oh, okay. So I felt something. I felt a certain type of way when I looked at this picture. It's time for me to let it go. I don't have to be mad anymore. And I literally was just listening to a voice note earlier today where I had some just epiphanies from the decluttering process and a conversation I had with my therapist. And the voice note, which I'm glad I recorded, is I said, I'm making a decision to no longer live in the past. I'm making a decision because I can't live simultaneously in the past and in the present to create a better future. I have to let it all go because I thought that holding on to anger towards people who hurt me was hurting them. It wasn't. It was hurting me. I thought that holding on to unforgiveness was like not letting someone off the hook. I thought that if I held on to unforgiveness and refused to forgive them, that I was punishing them for what they did to me. And it didn't. It was hurting me. It was hurting me. I was the one who was waking up every single day with a monkey on my back. They weren't. And so literally as I got rid of bags of trash, I felt like my shoulders weren't so heavy. I felt like my back wasn't so heavy. I felt like I was standing up straighter because as I dragged those bags of trash out, I also dragged unforgiveness out with it. And in that moment, I was beginning to feel free because I just didn't care about that old stuff anymore. I didn't care. And I remember in the voice note, it said, I remember I said in the voice note that my therapist said, can you change the past by holding on to it? No. Can you change what happened by holding on to the anger and unforgiveness? No. So what does it serve you to continue to hold on to it? It doesn't serve me. It just hurts me.
I just saw a quote yesterday or the day before that I was going through some old papers, a quote that I had written down, and it talked about, um, for, I'm not going to get it right, but about forgiveness is letting go of what could have been or what you think should have been. But that's part of forgiveness is is letting go the stories. It's
Mhm.
not just directed at a certain person or a certain event, but it's just the whole big picture of the path you thought you were on versus where you ended up.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm going to tie that into this last big question here, because we started off talking about purpose, and so
Mhm.
I'm very curious how your journey has illuminated more of your purpose, like as far as what you do with clients, what you like, have you changed course at all as far as your business and things like that as you've gone through this process? I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. It has impacted everything. And it's so funny um, because initially, when I first started off as an entrepreneur, I was teaching single women how to manage their money, single women with no kids who are in corporate, who are just blowing their money, but wanted something to show for it. Right. And so that's where I
I
started
didn't
off.
know that about you.
Yeah, it was to help women live a Sex in the City lifestyle on a budget. And so that's really what I started off with. But the funny thing is as I began to go on that journey, one of the things that really came to me, which defined how I taught, was that your self-worth isn't dependent on your net worth. And that was influenced because I was teased at 12 for wearing non-name brand shoes. And from then it put me on this path of financial destruction where I wanted to wear name brand stuff. I wanted to look the same as everyone else. I wanted to do the same things as everyone else because I was afraid that if I just be different, it would invite ridicule into my life. And and so there were just so many messages that one incident at the age of 12 gave me. And so then as I was going on this journey to transform my finances, I realized just how much of my self-worth was rooted in the things that I can do and the things that I can buy and how I can keep up. And so that journey of breaking free from that is what I taught. And so then when I became a single mom, I realized that the same financial principles that I was teaching worked, but there was an emotional side of single motherhood. There was a difference in how some of these things looked in life. And the Lord showed me that if I'm having trouble navigating finances as a single mom of two, when I say three, I'm counting myself in the family, right? I have two kids. So then imagine how other single moms are feeling. And so he pivoted me to on this purpose of single motherhood, right? And so on this journey of single motherhood, I ended up shutting down. I shut down my business for 3 years. And I realized it's because it had me come face to face with how I felt about my own journey as a single motherhood and coming face to face with what I thought family would look like for me, especially given that I come from a two-parent household. So having to come face to face with my disappointment, face to face with my fears, face to face with how I view myself, face to face with my fears of what my kids' lives would be like there's children of single moms. I couldn't do it. I could no longer sit up there and encourage and empower other single moms with all of that hurt and shame and fear in my own life to shut down my business. And in this decluttering journey, fast forward all these years later, remember I said I've been on a 2-year decluttering journey. This decluttering journey, the Lord started to speak to me in that journey. Say, let it all go. That when he told me that my mission was to help single moms, I didn't hear him wrong. I heard him correctly. I just had to come face to face with my own hurt, my own disappointment, my own feelings of abandonment and betrayal and loss, and renew my mind and allow the Lord to bring forth the things that were supposed to be there, to look at things differently, to find joy in the journey, and to define myself by the way he defines me. And that's why that old donut was so symbolic to me, because it recognized, it was representative of what I thought my life was going to be like as a single mom. And I had been running from it because that's how I saw life. I saw life as that old 6-year-old disgusting stale donut. And when I threw that away, it was almost like the world opened up for me. Purpose opened up for me. Shame and shackles of bondage were free from me, because that now went in the trash. And for me, I was able to step boldly into purpose because I was no longer carrying around the disgustingness of the past and unforgiveness. And so for me, this is when the Lord started to reveal it to me. I was like, well, I thought I was helping these single moms move from idea to income to like walk in purpose. And he began to show me, you can't walk in purpose if you're holding on to that bag of old stale formula and donuts. You can't. And so you have to go through this process of decluttering your life, your beliefs, shedding the toxic stuff, shedding the old stuff, shedding the stuff that no longer serves you, identifying and exposing the ways that you cope. Because for me, I was coping with financial stuff, which is why I went from an almost 800 credit score to poor credit. Even though I taught finance, and I carried a lot of shame about that for a long time. And I thought that that disqualified me from talking about finances. But no, it doesn't, because the knowledge is still the shame. It was how I coped with how I felt about what was going on. And I can teach people that not only do you have to have your faith, you have to declutter your life, but you have to own your finances, own your shame, and allow God to rewrite a different narrative in your life so you can be free to walk in purpose. Because I was walking in purpose, right? I was walking in purpose, but I can only walk so far until I can face to face with a wall that was pain, hurt, unforgiveness, trauma. And once I busted that open and was able to walk through it, that was what gave me the boldness. That was what gave me the confidence. That's what allowed me to be able to hear and to really be able to stand firm and say, yes, you might have gone through some disappointments. You might have gone through trauma. You might have gone through hurt, setbacks, pain. I get it because I've been there, but I can tell you right now without a shadow of a doubt that there is something different. There's something new, and that God has a purpose and a plan for you. You don't have to stay stuck in the past. You don't have to stay stuck in unforgiveness. Your best days were not before you. Your best days were not before you had kids. No, you do not have to martyr yourself on the altar of motherhood. Your kids will be fine. I don't care if they're children of a single mom. They will be fine because God's hand is on them. You don't have to live in a lie of what somebody who is no longer there said. He walked out, let him go. You're better off without him. And you can create a new life along with your kids and walk in purpose and happiness, fulfillment, and joy. But it won't happen unless you make the decision to change. It won't happen unless you make the decision to live different. It won't happen unless you make the decision to believe bigger, believe different, and trust God with your journey, your hurt, your pain, your fear, your worry, your past, all of that. Trust him with that. And that is the key that will unlock your purpose and freedom. And I don't care if the Lord gave you a glimpse of what it is, you won't be able to walk in it unless you surrender all to him. That's the key.
Wow. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
and Thank you so much. And I know there's a lot there, and your purpose is single mothers. But I think if, as people listen to that
Mhm,
last very powerful statement, um, if even if you remove that and that's
mhm.
not your story, what you said still applies. You
Absolutely.
still can only go so far before you come up against that wall. And that wall is all of it. It's the physical clutter, the mental clutter, the emotional clutter, the spiritual clutter. And I think this is one of the cases where if we read your story, or if you like wrote my top 5 tips for busting through, I think it wouldn't have had the same impact, because your passion and your conviction for how this changed your life just shines through when you speak. So thank you, thank you, thank you for agreeing to do this. I want to wrap up because we're coming up on 45 minutes. I feel like we could talk forever, but just leave us with like one like quick little nugget, and then tell people how they can find you if they want to talk to you more.
Absolutely. My last little nugget is, and it's so funny, the Lord has just been really just hammering this on my mind and on my heart the last few days. It's that you will only progress as far as you're healing. You will only progress as far as you're healing. And so you have to be willing to heal in order to walk in purpose. You have to be willing to heal in order to go through the clutter. You have to be willing to heal to remove the emotional clutter. But on the other side of that healing is a clutter free life. And I'm going to tell you right this, it's not like you're always going to, as long as you're alive, you're always going to be uprooting, removing clutter, because there's going to be the temptation to accumulate more stuff. Like me, it's like, I don't know about you, but like it's something about table surfaces where I will clean it and I feel like a week later it's full of stuff again. But like that's our lives, right?
That's why I
Unless
preach
we
maintenance. Maintenance is a real thing.
Maintenance is a real thing, and we have to do
Yep.
that in clutter for our physical clutter, but we also have to continue to do it in our mental clutter. And so
Yes.
there's going to be new levels of healing. But in order to really be able to get clutter free, stay clutter free in our physical and emotional environments, we have to be willing to heal, and we have to
Mhm.
be willing to do the maintenance work. I love how you said
Yes.
that, in
Yes.
order to stay and walk in that healing. And
Perfect.
yeah, that's what I would say.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you. All
Oh,
right. So, how can people find you if they want to talk to you more? Because I know that some people, I know a couple people had to drop off for work, and some people were watching on Facebook, and a lot of people will see this recording. And there are going to be people in that group that are like, I need to talk to this woman more. How do they do that?
yes, you can connect with me on social. I am on most of the social platforms. You can connect with me on Instagram at FNPHENOMENAL. So F is in family, N is in Nancy, the word phenomenal. You can head over to myideatoincome.com. Myideatoincome.com really just shares all the different ways that you can connect with me and work with me. It has like my workshops, different things that I have going on. You can also email me at hello@ffphenomenal.com. Honestly, my DMs are open. My email is open. I would love to hear from you. Yeah,
Great. And when I send out the recording, I'll put those on there. And then in the Facebook group, if you can go in the comments when we leave here,
absolutely.
and put all that in our Facebook group. And the Facebook group I'm referring to, if you guys don't know, if some of you came through different avenues, is my group that I run, that Aisha is a part of. It's called Less Clutter, More Peace. And you can find that on Facebook. Ironically, when I was starting it in January of 2020, I almost named it Less Clutter, More Purpose. So it's, I came this close. So I definitely love this message and have loved this whole conversation. Thank you so much, Aisha.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Yes. All right. We'll see you, everyone. Bye.